I am Amara Kinsley, and I am 46 years old. For most of my life, I believed love was measured by how much of yourself you could give away without complaint. I believed family was a contract sealed by blood, unbreakable and permanent. I believed sacrifice was noble, and that if I gave enough, endured enough, poured myself out completely, I would one day be met with gratitude and protection. I was wrong, but I did not know that then. Back then, I still believed in later. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you powerful, meaningful stories like this one. Stories about sacrifice, awakening, and the quiet strength it takes to choose yourself. I gave my youth away quietly. Not dramatically. Not with applause. I gave it the way people drop coins into a stranger's palm and keep walking. Without ceremony, without expectation. From the age of 17, my life stopped being mine alone. That was the year everything ended and everything began. Within 11 months, I lost both parents. My father first, sudden and final. My mother followed, worn down by grief and illness, leaving behind a house that felt too large and 5 children who felt too small for the world that awaited them. I was the eldest. There was no family meeting. No official decision. Responsibility simply settled on my shoulders like dust after a collapse. Heavy. Inescapable. While other girls my age learned laughter, romance, and recklessness, I learned survival. I learned how to wake before dawn to cook meals that would stretch through the day. I learned how to calculate school fees before I learned how to dream freely. I learned that exhaustion could be swallowed and that tears could be postponed. We lived in Brightwell Estate, a modest neighborhood on the edge of Rivershore City, where roofs leaked during heavy rain and everyone knew everyone's business. Our house became quieter after my parents' deaths, but my mind became louder. Every decision carried weight. Food or transport. Shoes or textbooks. Rent or medicine. I folded my dreams carefully and placed them on a shelf in my heart, promising myself I would return for them someday. I always believed in someday. I worked everywhere that would have me. I washed clothes for strangers until my fingers cracked. I sold fried snacks by the roadside, standing for hours under the sun. I cleaned offices at night when the city slept, scrubbing floors that reflected lives far easier than mine. My feet burned constantly. My back ached. But my siblings ate. They went to school in clean uniforms. They never heard teachers call them orphans. That mattered to me more than comfort. There was Ethan, the first after me, brilliant and restless, always pulling things apart to understand how they worked. He wanted to be an engineer. Naomi came next, sharp-tongued and ambitious, dreaming of business ownership and polished offices. Lucas followed, quiet but stubborn, set on becoming a lawyer because he believed words could protect people. Miriam wanted medicine, inspired by the doctors who had tried and failed to save our parents. And the youngest, Elise, spoke endlessly of travel, freedom, and a life without limitations. I believed in every single one of them. When they doubted themselves, I became certainty. When they failed, I became encouragement. I paid exam fees I could not afford. I borrowed money with interest that scared me. I skipped meals without telling them why. Love to me meant endurance. Endurance meant silence. Years passed. One by one, they left Brightwell Estate for universities, cities, and futures that expanded faster than mine. The house grew emptier. The walls echoed differently. I remained behind, working harder to support bigger dreams. My reflection aged faster than time allowed. Fine lines appeared near my eyes. My hands hardened. My posture changed. Still, I smiled whenever graduation photos arrived. Still, pride outweighed regret. I told myself my reward was watching them rise. By my early 40s, my body began to rebel. Pain settled into my joints like something that intended to stay. My vision blurred often. A doctor in a small clinic warned me gently that years of neglect came with consequences. I listened without fear. I had survived worse. Pain had always been temporary, until it wasn't. The day I could not stand long enough to work was the day my world shifted. For the first time in my life, I needed help. Not charity. Not rescue. Just support. I believed, without question, that my siblings would step forward. After all, hadn't I done the same for them? I called Ethan first. His voice was polite, distracted. He said he was busy, promised to call back. He never did. Naomi said business was unstable and times were hard. Lucas suggested selling the family house. Miriam spoke of distance and responsibility. Elise sent money once, then disappeared into silence. At first, I felt confusion. Surely this was temporary. Surely they were overwhelmed. I waited, patiently at first, then anxiously. Weeks became months. Silence grew louder than hunger. I sold small valuables. I reduced meals. I stopped going to the clinic. When I asked again, excuses became irritation. Gratitude hardened into inconvenience. One sentence changed everything. You chose that life. It cut deeper than any physical pain. In that moment, I realized something I had never allowed myself to see. My sacrifices had been rewritten as obligation. My love had been mistaken for duty. I had raised adults who knew how to receive, but not how to return. The betrayal did not come with shouting or dramatic confrontation. It arrived slowly, like a crack spreading through glass. I mourned not the help I lacked, but the belief I had carried for decades, that love guaranteed loyalty. That belief shattered quietly. One evening, alone in the dim house that once held laughter and chaos, I made a decision. I would never beg again. If survival required hardness, I would learn it. If love required boundaries, I would build them. The woman who lived only for others died that night. In her place rose someone sharper, quieter, and painfully aware. I did not announce my change. I did not confront anyone. I simply stopped waiting. I sold the family house, not in desperation, but with clarity. It was no longer a symbol of love. It was property. With the money, I paid debts, secured medical care, and rented a small apartment in Willow Point, a place where memories could not reach me so easily. Rest felt strange at first. Guilt followed every moment of stillness. But slowly, I learned that rest was not weakness. It was repair. I enrolled in a basic accounting course at a local community center. Numbers had always made sense to me. Soon, I began helping small traders keep records for a modest fee. The work was quiet, honest, and, most importantly, mine. Occasionally, memories returned without warning. A shared joke, a childhood promise. They hurt, but they no longer controlled me. I learned that love could exist without access. That forgiveness did not require proximity. When Naomi was the first to return with a carefully rehearsed apology, I listened. I nodded. I forgave, but I did not reopen doors. She left confused. I closed the door calmly. Healing was not sudden. Some nights I cried, not from weakness but release. I mourned the woman I had been and honored her strength. Her love was not a mistake. Abandoning herself was. By the end of that year, my life no longer revolved around absence. It revolved around intention. I was still standing, still learning, still becoming. And this was only the beginning. Amara's new life began without witnesses. No announcements. No explanations. She woke each morning in her small apartment at Willow Point, listening to sounds that were unfamiliar yet soothing. Distant traffic, a neighbor's radio, the rustle of trees instead of memories. For years, hope had been her companion, whispering promises of return and gratitude. Without it, mornings felt hollow. But emptiness, she learned, could be shaped into something solid. She stopped checking her phone obsessively. Messages came less often, and when they did, they carried no urgency. That absence stung at first. Then it dulled. The human heart, Amara discovered, could adjust to almost anything if given enough truth. She replaced waiting with routine. Gentle stretches for her aching joints. Breakfast eaten slowly, without guilt. Appointments kept on her own terms. Each small act felt rebellious, like reclaiming a stolen language. The accounting course ended quietly, with no ceremony. Still, it changed her. She began helping market women track sales, expenses, and savings. They paid modestly, sometimes in cash, sometimes in food, but they paid willingly. Respect returned to her life, not as gratitude for sacrifice, but as recognition for skill. That distinction mattered. It healed something deep and unnamed. Work expanded through word of mouth. A tailor asked for help. Then a mechanic. Then a small provisions shop. Amara's notebook filled with neat columns and careful calculations. Numbers didn't betray. They followed rules. They rewarded honesty. Each balanced page restored a piece of dignity betrayal had taken. Her body responded slowly to care. Pain didn't vanish, but it softened. Her eyesight stabilized. Sleep came easier. Rest, once forbidden, became medicine. For the first time, her days were not built around someone else's emergency. That freedom felt frightening at first. Then it felt sacred. Memories returned often, uninvited. A laugh shared years ago. a promise whispered during a blackout. They hurt, but they no longer commanded her actions. Amara learned to acknowledge memory without obeying it. Love, she realized, did not disappear simply because access ended. It changed shape. It became something quieter, less demanding. The first sibling to test her boundaries was Naomi. She arrived with careful words and practiced remorse. Her eyes scanned the apartment, measuring Amara's new life against expectations. Amara listened without interrupting. She noticed what wasn't said, the absence of responsibility, the softened excuses. When Naomi asked for forgiveness, Amara nodded gently. Forgiveness, she had learned, did not mean permission. Naomi left unsettled, expecting warmth that no longer existed. The door closed with calm hands. News traveled quietly through family channels. Some siblings felt guilt, others irritation. All felt discomfort. They had expected Amara to remain frozen in sacrifice, a permanent safety net. Her survival without them unsettled their conscience. Independence, when unexpected, can feel like accusation. When Ethan finally visited, authority sat heavily in his tone, unearned and outdated. He spoke as if time had not passed, as if roles remained unchanged. Amara responded with silence. Silence, she discovered, was powerful. It required reflection. Arguments only created noise. He left without resolution, carrying questions he wasn't ready to answer. Healing did not arrive all at once. Some nights, grief returned like weather. Amara cried, not from weakness but release. She mourned the woman she had been and honored her endurance. That woman loved deeply. That was not a mistake. The mistake was believing love guaranteed return. Forgiving herself for that belief took time, but it stayed. As months passed, Amara began mentoring younger women at the community center. She didn't teach bitterness. She taught boundaries. She spoke about planning, about helping without disappearing, about choosing oneself without guilt. Her words carried weight because they were lived, not borrowed. People listened. Some cried. Some resisted. All remembered. One evening, Miriam called. The conversation was awkward and short. Apologies hovered but never landed. Amara replied politely, firmly, without reopening doors. The call ended peacefully. No anger followed. Only clarity. That clarity felt like freedom. Life settled into a rhythm that felt earned. Work in the mornings. Rest in the afternoons. Quiet walks in the evenings. Her laughter returned, softer and less expectant. Trust rebuilt slowly, carefully. Caution protected her peace. Betrayal had changed her, but not into something cruel. It made her awake. Perspective arrived with time. Amara began to see her life not as a series of losses, but as chapters with different purposes. The years of sacrifice were not wasted. They were lessons written in endurance. But lessons, she accepted, were meant to end. The future required a different woman, one who understood limits. An invitation arrived one afternoon. A family gathering. Reconciliation, it claimed. Amara read the message slowly. She recognized the tone, hopeful, careful, unsure. After a long pause, she declined politely. There was no anger in her refusal. Healing did not require reunion. Sometimes distance was the kindest boundary. She redirected her energy into building stability no one could take from her. She saved carefully, invested wisely, planned with intention. For the first time, she imagined old age without fear. That imagination felt like freedom. People often asked how she became so strong. She never spoke of betrayal first. She spoke of choice. Strength, she explained, was not endless endurance. It was knowing when to stop. Some understood immediately. Others were not ready. Late at night, memories still visited. But they no longer ruled her. She had learned to sit with pain without surrendering to it. That ability became her quiet victory. Her siblings continued their lives, successful, distant, rarely present. Amara did not chase them. She did not resent them. She released the need to be seen as a hero. Heroes, she learned, are often used until they collapse. Instead, she chose to be human, limited, valuable, deserving of care. Friendships grew, built on respect rather than obligation. In those connections, she found warmth that did not demand sacrifice. Peace replaced performance. As years passed, her face softened, not from hardship but from rest. She carried herself with calm authority. Those who met her sensed depth, even without knowing her story. Looking back, Amara did not regret loving deeply. Love had shaped her, but she regretted abandoning herself in the process. That regret became wisdom she carried forward, never backward. Betrayal had awakened her, not to bitterness but to truth. And truth, though sharp, gave her a life that finally felt like her own. Time did something Amara never expected. It softened her without weakening her. The sharp edges that once protected her slowly rounded into discernment. She no longer lived braced for impact. Instead, she lived alert, awake to patterns, to tone, to intention. The difference was subtle but powerful. Where fear once guided her choices, clarity now stood. Her work grew steadily. What began as quiet bookkeeping for small traders expanded into a modest consultancy. She trained 2 women from the community center, paid them fairly, and trusted them with responsibility. Trust, she learned, was not something to withhold forever. It was something to give carefully, in portions, to those who showed consistency. Together, they helped struggling businesses stabilize, save, and grow. Each success felt communal rather than extractive. This was help without erasure. Health followed purpose. Her body still spoke in aches and warnings, but it also responded to care. Regular checkups replaced emergency visits. Meals became nourishment, not afterthoughts. Sleep returned in full cycles. The mirror reflected a woman whose face held history without bitterness. Lines remained, but they told a different story now, one of survival shaped into wisdom. Occasionally, she crossed paths with people who knew her siblings. Conversations hovered awkwardly at the edge of her past. Some praised her sacrifice openly. Others hinted at reconciliation, as if peace required reunion. Amara listened politely and changed the subject. She had learned that explanations were optional. Closure did not require consensus. Years passed. Elise sent a message once, a cautious greeting wrapped in distance. Amara replied kindly, briefly, without reopening wounds. That was the shape of love she could offer now. Clean, contained, honest. It did not ask her to bleed to prove sincerity. At the community center, Amara's mentoring sessions became a fixture. Younger women gathered not just for advice, but for reassurance that choosing oneself was not abandonment. She told stories, not naming herself as the hero, but speaking of patterns, of warning signs, of the quiet cost of being indispensable. She taught budgeting, yes, but more than that, she taught self-accounting. What are you giving? What are you receiving? What is the balance? Some resisted. Others listened and changed course. When one young woman declined to drop out of school to support relatives, she cried afterward, not from guilt but relief. Amara recognized that cry. It sounded like freedom arriving. The family invitation came again, years later. This time it carried urgency. A milestone celebration. Old wounds dressed as nostalgia. Amara held the phone and felt nothing spike. No anger, no longing, no obligation. She declined with kindness. She wished them well. Then she went back to her day. Peace did not require proof. She invested further, small, careful steps. A fixed deposit. A shared workspace. A long-term plan for retirement that did not depend on anyone's mercy. For the first time, she imagined aging with dignity. That imagination steadied her more than any promise ever had. People sometimes asked if she forgave her siblings. Amara answered truthfully. Forgiveness was not a moment, it was a practice. She forgave without forgetting. She released bitterness without reopening doors. Forgiveness, she learned, was something you did for your own peace, not a reward you handed out. On quiet evenings, she walked through Willow Point as the sun lowered. The air cooled. The world felt unhurried. She noticed small beauties she once rushed past. The way light settled on walls, the rhythm of footsteps, the hum of ordinary life. Presence became her refuge. One afternoon, a former neighbor from Brightwell Estate recognized her. They spoke briefly. When the neighbor said, "You gave everything for them," Amara smiled gently and replied, "I gave what I could at the time. No apology. No defense. Just truth placed softly." Looking back, she understood that her younger self had loved fiercely because she believed love was her currency. That belief was not foolish, it was human. What she knew now was that love, without respect, becomes depletion. Care, without boundaries, becomes disappearance. These truths did not make her colder. They made her precise. Her life no longer hinged on being needed. It rested on being aligned. She built friendships where care moved both ways. She laughed more freely now, without scanning for consequences. Joy felt lighter when it wasn't purchased with sacrifice. When illness visited again, as it sometimes did, she faced it with preparation, not panic. She had savings. She had plans. She had people who showed up without being chased. That was the quiet reward of choosing herself. In time, even the sharpest memories softened. Not erased, integrated. They no longer startled her awake. They no longer demanded reparation. They became part of a larger narrative, one that honored endurance but did not worship it. Amara never called herself strong. She called herself awake. Wakefulness meant noticing when giving turned into losing. It meant stepping back before love became a wound. It meant choosing a life that did not require collapse to be meaningful. As the years settled, she carried herself with an ease that surprised those who met her. There was depth in her voice, steadiness in her gaze. She did not perform kindness, she practiced it. She did not seek recognition, she accepted peace. If there was one lesson she wished she could hand to her younger self, it was simple. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to choose. You are allowed to live. Her story was never about betrayal alone. It was about awakening, about boundaries built from wisdom, not resentment, about the courage it takes to end a chapter without burning the book. And as Amara looked toward a future she had finally claimed, she knew this much with certainty. Sacrifice without boundaries is loss, and love without respect is emptiness. From that truth, she had built a life that belonged to her, fully, finally, and without apology. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Share this story with friends, family, and loved ones so they too